Most people watched the cancellation announcement and moved on. Nobody caught what was already building in every direction before the ink dried. By the end of the first week, something had shifted that no post on Truth Social could address, no network statement could contain, and no FCC reinterpretation could reverse. The backlash Trump triggered by trying to silence Colbert did not take the shape that power usually expects backlash to take. It did not arrive as a single wave, loud, chaotic, spent in 48 hours. It arrived as infrastructure, slow, load-bearing, distributed across industries and institutions and individuals who do not usually move together, built piece by piece out of the specific material that silence always produces when it is applied too visibly to someone too many people are watching. This is not the story of a canceled show. This is the story of what the cancellation set in motion. July 17, 2025. CBS announces The Late Show with Stephen Colbert will end in 2026. The language is financial. The framing is sympathetic. The statement thanks Colbert for 11 extraordinary years. 3 days earlier, Colbert had stood at his desk and called Paramount's $16 million settlement with the sitting president a big fat bribe. Plainly, without decoration, in the tone of a man who has decided the cost of saying it is lower than the cost of not saying it. Trump posts within hours. I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. Then, Jimmy Kimmel is next. Then, a post about Greg Gutfeld and ratings and relevance, each one looser and more satisfied than the last. The posts read the way a person reads when they are documenting a victory before it has finished resolving, before they know whether the thing they are celebrating will stay still. It does not stay still. Monday night, Colbert's first episode after the announcement. The audience, which has been in their seats for 20 minutes before the taping begins, fills the theater with the kind of noise that doesn't wait for a cue. A floor director who has worked the building for 9 years later describes it as the loudest pre-show warm-up he has ever heard in that room. Colbert walks out and stands in it for a long time. Cancel culture, he says, has gone too far. The room erupts. Not because the line is unexpected, it is exactly the line they were hoping for, but because of the precise weight he puts on the word too. Not comedy, not performance. The specific intonation of a man who has made a decision about the next 10 months and is announcing it from the inside of the decision. They made one mistake, he continues, his voice leveling. They left me alive. What follows is not a monologue in the traditional sense. It is a deposition. He names names. He cites dates. He connects the settlement to the cancellation to the FCC to the merger with the precision of a man who has been building this case for 72 hours and is presenting it now because the show is still on the air and the cameras are still running and there is nothing left to lose and everything left to say. The clip reaches 11 million views in 4 days. Then comes September. CBS suspends Jimmy Kimmel. The stated reason is an equal time violation, the same FCC reinterpretation that will later be used to pull Colbert's Tallarico interview. The suspension lasts 11 days. The backlash is immediate. Fallon, Stewart, Oliver, Myers, every surviving late-night host issues a statement. Colbert's is 3 sentences. This is obvious censorship. It is part of a campaign. The corporation complied. The Writers Guild sends a formal letter to the New York State Attorney General. The Directors Guild issues a public statement. The ACLU files a brief challenging the equal time reinterpretation on First Amendment grounds. 3 Democratic senators request a formal inquiry into the FCC's application of the rule. Trump calls it a witch hunt. Then he calls it totally standard regulatory guidance. Then he posts about Kimmel's ratings. The infrastructure keeps building. November. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr publishes a public notice expanding the equal time rule to cover daytime and late-night entertainment programming. The notice is framed as clarification. It is, as a former FCC policy analyst writes in a published legal review, the most significant reinterpretation of broadcast regulation in 40 years, issued without the standard notice and comment process, without a factual record, without precedent, and timed by a coincidence that the notice does not address, to coincide exactly with the peak of the Paramount merger review process. Colbert reads the notice on air, all of it, in the flat, factual voice he has adopted since the cancellation announcement. Not comedy voice, not performance voice, the voice of a man reading a document into a public record because someone has to. They haven't eliminated the exemption yet, he says, but my network is already enforcing it as if they had. February 16, 2026. The Tallarico interview is taped. The CBS legal team calls the production floor. The interview cannot air. Colbert is told he cannot discuss the decision on broadcast. He discusses it on broadcast. Let's just call it what it is, he says, sitting at the desk with his hands flat on the surface. Donald Trump's administration wants to silence anyone who speaks negatively about Trump on television, because all he does is watch TV. The audience does not laugh, they listen. Then, a door near the stage right curtain opens. A former CBS Regulatory Affairs executive walks out. She was in the room when the Tallarico decision was made, not adjacent to it, in it. She heard the reasoning given and the reasoning not given. She heard the word used to describe the relationship between the content decision and the merger review. The word was not censorship. The word was not pressure. The word was alignment, as in, the network's content decisions needed to demonstrate alignment with the regulatory environment. She writes the word on a piece of paper and holds it toward the camera without speaking. Then she says, "I was asked to help draft the statement calling this a financial decision. I did not do it. I resigned the following morning." The room goes the specific quiet of a room that has just heard something irrevocable. Trump's post from the morning of the cancellation reappears on the screen behind her. "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired," next to the CBS statement calling it a purely financial decision. The two documents sit side by side. The president celebrating, the corporation explaining. The word alignment between them, written on a piece of paper held by a woman who was in the room where it was used. A second figure steps out. He is a constitutional law professor at a major American university. He has spent 30 years studying the intersection of broadcast regulation and the First Amendment. He is not here to speculate. He is here to read, on camera, a single paragraph from the brief the ACLU filed in federal court 3 months earlier. A brief he helped draft, describing what the equal time reinterpretation represents in the specific context of an administration that has filed FCC complaints against ABC, sued CBS, banned the Associated Press from the White House press pool, and now applied regulatory pressure to prevent a Senate candidate from appearing on the most watched late-night program in America. He reads the paragraph. It is dense and precise and completely clear. The core sentence, "The pattern of conduct described constitutes a coordinated attempt to use the FCC as an instrument of political censorship in violation of the First Amendment, the Communications Act of 1934, and 60 years of settled broadcast law." The room processes it. A woman in the fifth row closes her eyes for a moment. A man near the aisle tilts his head back and stares at the ceiling. A production assistant in the wings stops typing and stands with her hands at her sides. One person stands. Not from the front row, not from the section nearest the cameras, from the back. A man in his 60s, moving slowly and deliberately, his hands coming together not with the reflex of a studio audience trained to applaud, but with the considered weight of someone choosing to stand at a specific moment because they have decided the moment requires it. Others follow. Row by row, from the back forward, the theater fills with the slow building of people rising, because the alternative, remaining seated while something that has been suppressed for 8 months is finally named in a room with cameras, is not something they are willing to do. Colbert watches it from the desk. He does not stand. He does not acknowledge it. He waits for it to resolve, and then looks at the camera. "The infrastructure of this silence," he says, his voice even and low, "has been under construction for a long time. The settlement, the merger, the FCC notice, the Kimmel suspension, the Tallarico ban, each one looked, in isolation, like a different story. Together, they are one story. And the story is, a sitting president used a federal regulatory agency as a tool to remove his critics from the public airwaves." He pauses. One beat. "I'm going to keep saying that, every night, until May 21st, and then I'm going to say it somewhere else." The clip is online before the episode ends. This time the title is a single sentence, 9 words, direct. It spreads before midnight. By morning, it has cleared 6 million views across platforms. The comment section fills with people who are not debating politics. They are debating what they watched on a man's face when he said the words, "somewhere else." Late-night hosts from networks that have not been directly targeted issue public statements. Journalists who have been covering the FCC story for months cite the episode as the clearest public articulation of the pattern they have been documenting. A Democratic FCC commissioner calls the situation the most serious threat to broadcast independence in the history of the commission, in a statement that receives more media coverage than anything the FCC has done in a decade. Trump posts at 7:18 a.m. It is the longest post yet, 6 paragraphs. The capital letters begin in the second sentence. The word fake appears 5 times. Witch hunt appears 3 times. A personal description of Colbert runs to 4 sentences and manages, within those 4 sentences, to reference talent, ratings, the radical left, and what the president describes as Colbert's total and complete inability to accept that America chose winners. Each paragraph of the post is screenshotted and placed by accounts on every platform directly beside the specific clip it is responding to. The split screen assembles itself without assistance. On one side, a desk, a camera, a man naming a pattern in precise sequence. On the other, 6 paragraphs of rage without a single counter-document, counter-date, or counter-witness. The infrastructure of the backlash does not peak. It does not resolve. It distributes. The ACLU brief moves through the courts. The Attorney General's office in New York confirms receipt of the Writers Guild letter and opens a preliminary review. 3 universities announce academic panels on broadcast freedom and executive overreach, all citing the Colbert situation by name. An independent documentary team begins filming. The YouTube channel keeps uploading. The show's final episode is scheduled for May 21st. The merger review is still pending. The FCC reinterpretation is still being litigated. The equal time rule, which was supposed to be a mechanism for fairness, is now the subject of a federal lawsuit, 3 congressional inquiries, a published legal brief, and a law school curriculum. Trump tried to silence one man. He built instead an infrastructure of opposition that is larger, louder, more documented, and more distributed than anything a single canceled show could have produced. The silence he paid for produced more noise than the broadcast he ended. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building. And once you see what's coming, you'll understand why silence is always louder than power.